Sara is down to her roots free. And in that freedom, bold. These are words by William Wordsworth, a poet, and I thought they were very appropriate for this day. My name is Enid Kiza, and I'm Sara's niece. Actually passed by that title for so many years. The aunties there, I think, didn't even know my name because everybody used to say Sara's niece, Sara's niece. And I'm very happy and privileged to be here on this day. I'm grateful to the Vice Chancellor, the Chairman of the Council, the organizers, and at Makerere's 100th anniversary. Thank you for this wonderful celebration. I was actually very surprised that we were having such a grand thing. Thank you. We also thank God that this is a day of celebration and happiness. So who is Sara? Sara was born in the Erasto Nyanduha family of Ntiro Kitara Kingdom. Sara and her husband, the late Professor Sam Ntiro, met here on Makerere Hill, and they got married here. They had 2 children, Joseph Simbo. Unfortunately, Simbo passed away. He was living in Tanzania, but he left 2 children. But Sara brought up many of us. We were 5, her brother's children. Her brother passed away when we were still very small, so she brought us up. So she had a total of in her house. Sara went to be with the Lord on the 22nd of October, 2018. I was pleasantly surprised that you chose the theme about boldness, because as you can see, the title that we chose for Sara's upcoming book is Emboldened, because that's what described her, that's what made her what she was. The royal house of Ntiro, because her mother was a princess. The Abakwonga clan, which is a clan which is responsible for administration in the palace and in the kingdom. And then the British missionary education system. And her godmother was a British missionary called Systems. And at only 10 years, she left Hoima and went to study at Budo. And to her father, who was an exceptional gentleman, very soft-spoken, but he quickly noticed that Sara was very asthmatic. So he told her that she should not cook, which raised a lot of hell in the home. But he said there are enough chores. Allowed her to sit at the dining table with him, while the rest of the ladies were on a mat, perhaps in another room, not even in the same room. Foresight that girls' roles in society would change very soon. But most fundamental, he allowed her to go to Budo, where he himself had been a saint. But in our thinking, would think that maybe it's her father who would have gone there, her brother. But he decided that it was Sara who was going to follow his education footsteps. And one time I asked Ntiro, but how did your fathers decide that you got mixed school rather than a girls' school? Because by doing that, they wanted the girls to sit at the same table with the men and not. We also joke that Erasto Nyanduha was a strategist because, okay, he was a son of a chief and he was a Mkwonga, which is an important clan, but he still decided to marry a princess to top it off. Enough, it helped, because the royal family had very strong networks everywhere. So when Sara left Hoima at 10 years, she already was that distance, and transport was not easy. And they did introduce her to a lot of people who later helped her to become what she was. We also think that Sara's godmother, the missionary lady, looked out for her and maybe spread the word in her circles that she had this bright goddaughter. And we her out of Makerere, out of the class, as the person to go to Oxford. And when she arrived in the United Kingdom, she was welcomed by a church missionary clergyman who had worked at Hoima. So you can see the network. They really rounded off things and made sure that things worked well. So Sara in Oxford was, as the chairperson has said, she was a revolution. But one of her friends, David Le Breton, commented and said, I thought I was being bold by considering joining the Oxford University Pistol Shooting Club, but I found Sara already there having fun and challenging people. And then even on her return, when she finished her degree, to return back home, she opted to. So on her return, she had already been identified by Miss Cox. So she straight away went to Gayaza to become a teacher. Trouble for Gayaza still. The first time they gave her her salary, she said, no, I'll not take this salary because I want a salary like the men of my same qualifications. So she refused. And that's how her story. I think more people will talk about her civic on so many commissions. But as a family, we are particularly proud that in spite of Sara going and studying abroad, she came back and taught in rural schools. And she also taught at Kivambe Girls' School. We thought that was really, I mean, she was a grounded person. She didn't remain up there in the air. In 1973, and then after Duhaga and the relatives supported her, responsibility and leadership, be safer and stronger, and she was right. She also exposed us to so many things, going to the theater, the drive-in, classical music, dining etiquette, keeping diaries, respecting language, a table, always with paper, aerograms, paper in case you wanted to write. But what captured me most was this Basildon bond paper that she always kept. It was so beautiful. It is still beautiful, I think. Yeah, so she kept that paper and look at her as an administrator and the things she did. But as children, we saw that the demands on her to mother students were so big. Really, there were so many students coming into the house, and you could see that they had problems. She didn't tell us about them, but you could see that they were trying to solve problems, almost like on an ending, flow of students. Particularly, I remember one student, he was a medical student, his mother had mental health issues, and he really did not cope. It looked like he was also going to tip over. But Sara helped to bring him back, became his full-time mother, and kept him in touch with his relatives. But then there were the Students' Guild representatives, the bold students who dared those were in real trouble. At least when they came, we would see that things were really, really serious. One of them, Sam Musoke, narrated to me that one day they had heard that Olaro Tunu had been picked up, and they were so scared. So they came to Sara's house and congregated there. And then they sat and waited. And then late in the night, the phone rang, and then Sara went and was talking in a hushed voice. Then she came back and said, Otunu has crossed the border. So said, don't say anything, go back to your house of host. Yeah, so that is the family's picture of Sara at Makerere. We don't know much about the administration and what, but as children growing up, that's what we saw. And she did a number of those things, I think, and she got noticed, and she had to leave. And when she had to leave, it means that our family system disintegrated. it was actually so traumatizing because Sara was the head of this system. She was holding it together and driving it. So our academic performance suffered initially. And then Sara also struggled to keep in touch with us to make sure that we were studying. Yes, we had other relatives who took us up. I only visited her once in Nairobi during the time that she was in exile. But thanks to relatives, we did finish our studies and we started families. Sara returned in the 80s and we were reunited, but she found difficulty fitting in. As she used to say, the Amin era children had grown up and had become adults. And there were things that she was seeing that she could not understand or rationalize. But she got on with her assignment in the Prime Minister's office and later did counseling work for the health sector and NPAT, retired in 1995, and then moved back to Hoima in 2009. Her return to Hoima was both exciting and disappointing, but the church there, especially Bishop Nathan Kiamanywa, who was her son clan-wise, really held her. He would take her on all his pastoral visits, so she kept engaged mentally and spiritually. And we are really grateful to Bishop Kiamanywa. And then also with the Honorable Joyce Impanga, they were involved in the establishment of the Rural Girls University in Kagadi, who were always so worried about these two elderly ladies on dusty, bumpy roads going to Kagadi all the time. But we knew that they are unstoppable in their passion for girl child education. And I also felt that perhaps they were a bit disappointed because one day Sara told me that, I'm so sad that rural children do not even have the same opportunities that I have had over 50 years ago in terms of the quality of education. But we wish to thank Mr. Musheshe of Kagadi, who was in charge of this Girls Rural University. Sara continued her quest for improved girl education. Even when she was in Hoima, she would celebrate her birthdays at her old school, her old primary school. At this juncture, we wish to thank Fawe that gave Sara a platform through the Sara Ntiro lectures and helped to link her to much younger generations because that was important for her continuing being a role model. Lord Professor George Piwang Jalobo, who actually did a lot of the, I would call it, branding of Sara. Sara was recognized by so many, young and old, local and international, perhaps to mention, including a doctorate of humane letters by Spelman College in the early 2000s. Thank you, Fawe. Sara was exceptional. She put a grain of boldness in everything, and I would say everyone. Johann Goethe would have loved Sara because she yearned for the impossible. So would Paul Coelho, because experiences come out of being bold, not shy. And I'm sure Makerere is aware that often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. As a family, we are blessed with our Sara. She gave us a head start. Next year, we will have our 4th generation woman graduate. Sara was very proud and reminded me that she had been kicked out of the maths class at Makerere, but her granddaughter Kengabi vindicated her. That's what she said, that Kengabi has vindicated me because she graduated with a 1st class in maths and business from Waterloo University. You can wave, Kengabi. The family has decided to turn part of Sara's home into a Sara Ntiro Center to cement her legacy and inspire young men and women to excel. In closing, I say, in each one of us, there's a boldness not yet lived. So let's live it. And in every community, there are Saras out there, many not recognized, not supported. Let's find them and let's support them. And amongst us, there are icons, Auntie Joyce, Auntie Rhoda. Let's celebrate them every day because they have earned it. They have paid a price we will never know. And if we celebrate them, then we'll inspire those that come after to follow in our icons' footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I promised you a 5-star, 5-course intellectual menu. We are headed for the main course shortly. And before we get there, allow me to welcome Owechitiwa David Impanga. Minister in the Buganda Kingdom, and his wife also happens to be our colleague, Fiona Mpanga. and also a member of the University Staff Tribunal. I want to once again recognize and welcome in a very special way Mama Rhoda Kalema. We thank you so much for making time for the Makerere University community. We are very happy and we continue to thank God for you. Our university bursar, Mr. Evarist Reino Mugisha, is with us. Here, Mugisha Baine, the Dean of the School of Women and Gender Studies. Also very important for today's topic, we shall be hearing from her shortly, Professor Sara, who is also a new member of the University Council, representing the Senate, just recently elected. We already heard from the Dean of Performing Arts and Film, Professor Sylvia Nanyonga Tamusuza. She's here with us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished speaker basically needs no introduction in Uganda, so I will only do it as a formality because we have been doing it in all these lecture series. Honorable Joyce Mpanga, whom was Wekitiwa, because she sits in the Rukiko, is special for us this afternoon because besides her own accomplishments as an individual, she studied and served with Sara Ntiro. So there is no one who is better positioned to reflect on the life and experience of Sara Ntiro and what it means for us today than Honorable Joyce Mpanga. But you may also wish to know that she was a minister in the Uganda government, and here the ministry she headed, the Ministry of Women in Development. That is from 1988 to 1989. Professor Sara, when you people were beginning studies on gender, you studied with women in development. I think that was the first academic discipline on women issues. For you, you were in class. Honorable Joyce Mpanga was in the field, already implementing women and development. And by the time you moved from weed to word to God today, she has lived all that entire story. And yet we're asking ourselves the question, how does Sara Ntiro's experience reflect on the university we are trying to build for the next 100 years? Again, Honorable Joyce Mpanga was the Minister of State for Education. So she fits perfectly to discuss the life of a woman who has contributed significantly to women's rights, women empowerment, and women's education, and on the subject of education itself. And when you talk about laws, policies, and legislation, she was a member of the Ugandan Parliament, representing Mubende district. But also something which is the icing on the cake. She's an alumnus of Makerere University, from where she graduated in 1958. Honorable Joyce Mpanga, we are extremely delighted, and we can't wait any longer to hear from you. You're most welcome.
Going to be my way. Thank you very much. As I've told you, my name is Joyce Mpanga, but when I was here, I was Joyce Masembe. And I like it when I come back for you to tell me I'm Joyce Masembe. The chairperson and members of the University Council, members of the family of the late Sara Ntiro, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, who I understand is also my alumni in the US, and members of the university management, the distinguished panelists, members of Makerere staff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all apologize for talking to you seated, because I feel more comfortable this way. I can't stand. It is my distinctive honor and pleasure to join you at my alma mater this afternoon as we celebrate the life of my sister. They said my contemporary, and I say it with hesitation because she was ahead of me quite a number of years. A trailblazer, a distinguished scholar, and a selfless member of society. The late Sara Ntiro. I wish to thank the chairperson of the council, the vice chancellor, and all previous speakers for their kind words in respect of my humble contribution to society of Uganda. Thank you ever so much. I'm particularly pleased that the leadership of Makerere has, as part of the university centennial celebrations, found it fit to celebrate the legacy of Sara Ntiro, whose life is a reflection of how far we have come along the journey of ensuring equitable access to education for the girl child. I thank God, whose grace and loving kindness has preserved me all my days and enabled me to join you today for this wonderful celebration of selflessness and bravery of Sara Ntiro. You wonder why I always put in Nyendoha, because she was not Sara Ntiro to begin with, although I can see Ntiro here, who would rather block the Nyendoha name